So I was gonna wait till the weekend to put this video out, but you guys are driving me crazy with your Instagram messages wondering if you should buy these or not. And we'll get into that. So I've been lucky enough to have gotten a set of these from a local distributor, and I've had them for about the last month and a half. I've been able to put some pretty good wear on these, as you can see. And I've also had a lot of time to really get used to them and get a feel for them so I can, you know, try and tell you guys what they're like. So first let's get into the specs and how they differ from the original 55mm Indies. So these are 55mm axle height. So that's from the base plate to the center of the axle, 55 mils. So the mids, what makes them special and new is the fact that they have a 52mm axle height. So 52mm from base plate to center of axle. So that's roughly the same as, say, like a Thunder. Now the only thing they really did to get that is they just shortened the hanger a bit. So this is the exact same geometry, I think, and you know, same bushings as the original Indies. They did change the kingpin though. They got this little button kingpin that everybody's ranting or raving about. And that's supposedly to help make it smoother for grinds and give it a little more kingpin clearance. Now, just looking at the two of these, the old ones have more kingpin clearance, at least a mil or two. So that's about all I want to get into before the skating. On that note, here's the skating. Yeah, it feels heavy, but nothing I'm too unused to. Really sharp turn and really loose right off the bat. I gotta tighten these a ton. Now I ride my trucks like a solid medium, not too tight, not too loose. These are crazy squish right off the bat. Oh, I couldn't get it off the ground. Okay, definitely gonna be a bit of an adjustment period here. I mean, I'm not even warmed up, but yeah, I don't know if you guys can tell. Let's see if I get some pop on these, because right now I don't have it yet. Look how mashed out these bushings are. Hopefully they tighten up. I know some Thunders and Ventures do that, like the deluxe bushings. But yeah, I guarantee you I changed the geometry on this board by cranking these bushings down so tight. They're growing on me. as you guys could see, I didn't have any problems skating these. And these are the 139s. So I definitely did enjoy having an Indy that's a little bit lower with an 8-inch board. So first off, you guys, there's an elephant in the room. And what it is these little trucks. So you would think that the mids are gonna be a little bit lighter, right? You know, you got the 55mm standard, they're gonna make these a little lower, they're gonna be lighter. On the contrary, these are actually 10 grams heavier than the standard. And I think most people already kind of think of independent standards as like the maximum heaviness for a truck. So it just seems counterintuitive that they actually made these heavier. Now, in spite of that, you can still get some pop on these. I mean, as you can see, Mr. Tiago Lemos doesn't have any trouble jumping, you know, over small buildings on these trucks. However, I think if we gave him, you know, these trucks on a 2x4, he could still accomplish some pretty incredible things. But personally, I did actually find these to be a little bit heavy on the first day that I put them on. However, I put them on after riding some Thunder 147 lights, and those were really light. So it was a huge difference. It was like a 70 gram difference per truck on the first day. And also the fact that they were kind of low just threw me off a little bit. So there was a few days adjusting to these, which isn't actually that bad. But overall, I mean, they are Indies. And I love Indies, and they really didn't change the turn much. You know, like I said, they've got the same bushings. The geometry is more or less the same. So basically, I just felt like I was on an Indy that was a tiny bit lower and kind of heavy. All right, but why are these heavy? Where does that come from? So where that comes from actually is the hanger. This hanger is like substantially beefier than the regular 55mm standard. Like, it's probably hard to pick up on film, but it's right here. This part's way thicker. And there's also about like 1.5 to 2 more mils of material over the axle. Look how little space there is. Like, I can only get a fingernail in there with these lock-ins. That axle is beefy. Like, there's not a lot of space right there. So that, I think, was an interesting choice, but I'm sure they did that to get kingpin clearance, because if they didn't put those extra couple of mils over top of the axle, like on the hanger, that the kingpin clearance would be pretty negligible on these. So that did 2 things. 1, it's gonna turn it into a much longer lasting truck. But 2, I found that I wasn't locking in very well on these trucks until I had them pretty ground in. So right now, these trucks are about 6 weeks in. Guys, they don't wear out fast. I've been intentionally trying to grind these trucks down. I've been doing a lot of slappies, a lot of curbs, a lot of crusty ledges to just really get these ground down. And now at about 6 weeks with these nice grooves, they're really nice. They lock in great. And I think I'm gonna get a lot of life out of these. So that's one thing I would say about these trucks, is I think they're going to be very durable. And now, being this ground down, I did weigh them one day actually when I was changing boards. These now weigh, this ground down, the same as the 55mm standard. I find that kind of humorous. But again, getting back to that weight, you guys know I like a heavier truck, so that actually was beneficial because it still gave me that responsiveness that I like to feel on a truck. However, if you don't like heavy trucks, I'm gonna recommend that you wait till the summer drop and get the hollow ones. Also, another thing to note, guys, we're about to get into the kingpin. I know you guys are like, what about the kingpin, Ben? These kingpins and base plates are going to be available to the public, at least according to their Instagram, they're going to be available by the spring. So that's pretty cool to know. Okay, but now let's get into these. So there isn't a lot of clearance on these. Like I said, it looks like there's at least a mil or 2 less clearance than the 55 standard. And because of that, I hung up quite a lot trying to do Smith grinds on ledges. So I definitely didn't find any benefits there. The little button nub, it was smoother on, like, say, a flat bar. When I say a flat bar, guys, I mean round. It did feel pretty smooth there, you know, like I think there was a bit less friction. But in general, I think it didn't help me out with Smiths on ledges at all. In fact, you guys, here I go, crazy Bendigo theorizing stuff. I actually think this is harder to grind than the traditional one. Here's why. So this nut right here is just gonna be a cheap stock metal nut, right? It's not like hardened steel like a kingpin has to be. A kingpin has to be really, really strong. So it's inherently gonna be a lot stronger than these cheap little nuts they put on top of here. So I actually think this was harder to grind on concrete. That's my personal opinion. So I find the 55 standard way better for Smith grind clearance because again, this is cheaper and grinds down easier and there's more clearance. Because when it comes to Smith grinds being easy on ledges, it has very little to do with the shape of this. It has everything to do with kingpin clearance. For example, here's me trying to do it on these. And then as soon as I jumped on my buddy's board who had some Venture Highs, which have amazing clearance, not very good turning because they have so much clearance, but they have amazing clearance, it was no problem Smith grinding this chunky ledge. As we can see, second try. That was second try. I had to lean back harder. But yeah, as we can see, it's all about clearance. It's not about the shape of your kingpin. Okay, so there you go, you guys. That's my opinion on this thing. I do think that it would go really well as an upgrade to a standard Indy. I'll say that much for sure. But I'm skeptical as to whether these are actually beneficial or not because I personally didn't find it to be beneficial. Okay, next, let's get into pinchy grindiness. So I do find that these actually pinch a little bit better just because they're a little bit lower, but not until they got ground down. Like I mentioned, until I got rid of that couple extra mils of hanger on here, I found they didn't lock in as nicely. And I found having a really square edge wheel, I was riding lock-ins on these, that was really beneficial. Like I think if I was riding some classics, especially like worn down 50 or 51 millimeter Spitfire classics, I do not think that I would be locking in very well on these at all, especially on like a big fat round flat bar. But now they're in the glory zone. These trucks did break in real nice. The grind did feel a little bit harder to me. Maybe they're tweaking the formula. I couldn't tell you that. I'm sure they'll say they're not. But anyways, they felt a little bit different to me, a little bit harder. I definitely didn't have any problem with, you know, all my technical flippery and grindiness. They're just overall, like, they're a good truck. Would I ride them over the 55 mil standard? I'm not actually sure. In 144, I don't know. I love the 144 standard. I love the 149 standard. I probably will continue to ride these in the 139 because like I mentioned, I like them. They feel a little bit more stable than the old classics, although I do love these trucks. But yeah, that's it. That's the independent mids. If you love independent standards and you really want to try them, go for it. If you like a light truck, wait for that summer drop. Anyways, that's all I have to say. I may have already said that. This is the end of the video. This video has been rushed and I didn't plan it properly. I hope you appreciate it and stop bugging me on Instagram about making me do a review so you can decide if you want to buy these or not. I'm stoked to have a couple pairs. Anyways, that's all. Till the next video, you guys.